953 Jams fam. As promised, I have the amazing Amanda Edwards, an American attorney and city council member, Harvard graduate, former employee of Miss Sheila Jackson Lee. She is running to serve the 18th Congressional District in the United States Congress. So go ahead, let us hear your voice, Miss Amanda.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Especially at a time like this, we have so much to talk about.
We do.
Yes.
Okay, so first and foremost, let's let the audience get to know a little bit about you and your, political values and, your plans.
Absolutely. So, for those that are not familiar, I am from the district. I was born, raised, and I still live in the 18th Congressional District. I'm a proud graduate of Eisenhower High School, so I was a Mighty Eagle, and had the opportunity to go to Emory undergrad, and then in between college and law school, worked for Congresswoman Jackson Lee in the 18th Congressional District office in DC. And then I had the opportunity to go to Harvard Law School. I came back down to Houston eventually after I made a stop in New Orleans after I graduated, and then I came back to Houston and started practicing law as a public finance lawyer. So I was bringing public funding to public projects. And of course, a lot of what you do in Congress is bringing dollars home to the district. And then of course, I became one of the at-large city council members. Something that really motivated me in my journey, just in terms of, becoming a city council member and getting into public service, actually happened to me when I was very young. My dad was sick and got diagnosed with something called multiple myeloma when I was 10 years old, and died from it when I was a teenager. But when he was experiencing that, I remember asking my dad questions like, well, what would happen if his life-saving treatments, what if they were not going to be covered by the insurance companies? And so I was learning about what insurance was and stuff.
As a kid.
Yeah, exactly, because that was what was happening in our house. And so I would ask that question, what happens if they say no? And I was a young teenager at that point, but old enough to understand what was going on. And my dad would just say, well, we'd have to figure something else out. And, I knew at that time that wasn't the right answer, and that the right answer should have been that we actually had systems that worked for people, systems that save lives, systems that are really contemplating the needs of people. And so for me, politics and public service and government is about more than just power and horse trading. It's to me about the lives that are hanging in the balance of the decisions we make or choose not to make when we're in elected office. And so I kind of serve with a sense of urgency because of that. And now, of course, we are in a moment where there's a lot of urgency that we are now facing and encountering today. I've now thrown my hat in the ring to be the next Congresswoman for the 18th Congressional District. So, as you know, the 18th Congressional District has a tremendous amount of history, rich history. Was served by Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Sylvester Turner. But of course, as you also know, that Congressman Turner and Congresswoman Jackson Lee both passed within less than a year of each other. So this district has experienced a lot of loss. I think right now we are embarking upon this next leg of the journey. We've got to get somebody who is going to uphold that legacy of fighting for people and fighting for justice, but then at the same time, you've got to be ready for the fight for today. And that means somebody who's got a bold vision, someone who's going to really be able to be innovative in terms of how we approach this, a fresh perspective, because what Trump is doing is unprecedented. And so we've got to be able to bring that up. But then also somebody who has the experience that can deliver the results, from a policy perspective, in terms of working with people, being consistently in the community. That's what I've done my entire trajectory is serve people. So I'm, one of a small group of people running for the race. Is about 30 people.
It's 30 of you guys running. Okay.
Yeah, but I think we're going to be in great position to get it done. So I'm working hard to make sure that happens.
Okay, well, we do have a little bit of breaking news that you briefed me on right before we started this interview. So go ahead and tell them, the audience, what you told me when you got here, because this is important. So make sure you guys are listening.
There's an old adage. So let me back up and tell people what's going on with the district. So,
yes.
Congresswoman. So just to kind of give everybody, and then some people who are not familiar with my story, I'll share my story here.
Yes.
I was a front runner in the mayor's race in 2022. And Congresswoman Jackson Lee in 2023 decided that she wanted to come home to Houston and serve as our mayor. She, of course, was serving in the 18th Congressional District for nearly 30 years, and so she decided to do that. I then decided to pivot out of the mayor's race and then get into the 18th Congressional District race back in 2023. I always like to tell people the story so they're like, didn't this happen or didn't that happen?
Yeah.
So I like to share the story. So 2023, got in the congressional race and was the front runner there until Congresswoman Jackson Lee did not win the mayor's race. And so when she didn't win, she came back, refiled for the 18th, and then beat me in the primary of March of 2024. Shortly thereafter, maybe 3 months later, she announced her pancreatic cancer diagnosis, and then she passed away just a short time after that announcement. And so because of the timing of that, of her death, you know, we could not go back to the voters that had just voted in the primary. We had to go through a special process where the precinct chairs made this election. And so Congressman Turner and I were in that race among other people. We were 1 vote apart on the first round, 4 votes apart on the second. So he ended up emerging as the person selected to become the congressman, to pursue the congressional seat. And so he ended up winning the seat, and then 7 weeks later, he passed away. And that was on March of this year. So the seat has remained vacant since March.
And you announced you were running in March.
In March,
yes.
That's correct. So the governor has discretion in our state law as to when he can call, if he calls a special election, and when he calls it. And so in this instance, he decided that he was going to delay the calling of the special election. So that didn't get called until November 4th, 2025. So the special election to actually fill in the unexpired portion of the term that Congressman Turner was not able to serve out is taking place on November 4th, 2025. So what took place between then? Well, in May of 2025 is actually when the special election could have been called, but wasn't called. And so during that time, they had something called the Big Beautiful Bill. It cut.
So how do you feel about the Big Beautiful Bill?
I feel horribly about that. It cut $900 billion from Medicaid, $300 billion from SNAP. The 18th Congressional District has a disproportionately higher number than other places that have those beneficiaries. So it really hits hard in the 18th. So for that to be cut, people who want to get graduate student loans, the amount of the money that is made available to you now is limited. So there's healthcare is impacted as well. It's very negative for us in terms of giving us an opportunity to thrive. And that is my goal, is to create a community where we can all thrive, not just get by day to day. And
right.
That's the struggle. We need to get away from that. And so it's really bad. And so that only passed when it first came out of the House of Representatives by a margin of 1 vote. So had I been in Congress, had I been, had we called a special election timely, all of those things,
yeah.
I could have been the vote to block the Big Beautiful Bill. So it's devastating to know that all these people are going to have, you know, all the setbacks in their lives, all their social safety nets taken away.
Because the election got put back.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's going on. So in the meantime, now what's going on in breaking news now? The redistricting. So we already had this Big Beautiful Bill get passed when the seat was empty. And let me just say this about the seat. When you count up the math, when Congresswoman Jackson Lee was sick and passed away, and Congressman Turner passed away, and then the delay in the special election, and likely the special election runoff that we will have, you add all of that up, we're talking about 18 months of the 800,000 people in the 18th Congressional District not having a vote, not having a voice, not having anybody to advocate on their behalf of federal funding. We're in hurricane season. So not to have somebody there to be able to bring resources down is dangerous. So anyway, I say all to say, we're in a real dangerous position. It's a bad spot to be in. So to add insult to injury, on top of passing this Big Beautiful Bill and having this empty seat, now they have put us on the chopping block. So there's an adage that goes like this: if you are not at the table, you're what's on the menu. And there is no voting member at the table.
And now
we are on the menu, literally. So just yesterday, the House Redistricting Committee of the State House, the Texas State Legislature, they came in. No, let me back up. So the Department of Justice issued a letter to the state saying that the 18th Congressional District the 29th Congressional District, the 33rd, and the 9th, all were unconstitutionally racially gerrymandered districts. And so in response, the Governor Abbott, called a special session to take place. That started on July 21st. I went up to Austin on July 21st, and then I went back when there was a hearing, and then I went back again just 2 days ago. So they have been pushing this redistricting through, ramming it through very, very fast, because they want people to be unaware and unable to engage.
Has this been on the news?
It's been on the news, but people, I mean, people are not really understanding what's going on. I mean, they know, but then they don't, right? Like, who knows what the map looks like? I can raise my hand and say, I don't.
They may hear about congressional districts, but they may not know that what district they live in.
Correct.
So it's not,
exactly.
It's not very common knowledge. So I'm glad you're on here to, just break it down and explain to people. So with that, I'm gonna let you continue.
Absolutely. So they had, they started this special session. They started with no map. So understand that. So we were testifying. We testified in Austin. I testified in Austin. I testified when they brought a panel down to Houston.
Yeah, that was last week.
Yeah, they had that last week, and then they brought it to Arlington as well. I did not testify in Arlington, but we had opportunities to testify, but you were testifying in the abstract. There was no map for you to see, no lines drawn on any piece of paper that was made available to the public. On Wednesday, that's when they released the map and said, we're gonna have a hearing on Friday to talk about the map, and you can come to Austin if you want to be a part of that hearing, but that's it. There was no virtual participation on this hearing. You could only go to Austin. So how many people can drop what they're doing and in 2 days' time show up in another city and go testify? I mean, that's not really accessible to the public in that way.
Right.
So when we go, I testify again. The map is terrible. Let me just explain that what the old map was like and then what the new one is. But basically, they did not make changes or modifications that helped. And when you talk about redistricting, you are suppressing, you are diluting the voting stream of Black and brown voices. You are having the effect of ripping communities apart in their cohesion. Sometimes, that could affect participation. So people find themselves having an identity, and especially in the district where I'm from. In the 18, people are proud to be the district that Barbara Jordan led, and they're proud of the fact that they have this piece of history, the Mickey Leland connection there.
Right. There's
a pride in our district, and so you telling people who have had that type of representation for decades, get out of here, you're out. So they took out the airport. The Intercontinental Airport is out of the 18th. They took out the Northwest. So Acres Homes, Mary used to talk about Acres Homes all the time. I'm from that area, in the Inwood Acres Homes area too. That's all gone. All of the Northwest part is gone, and now it's kind of what's left is kind of northeast, and then it kind of comes down to downtown Fifth Ward, and then it comes down to downtown Pleasant, and then you got Pleasantville, and then you keep going, and it goes far down south, even hits up to Missouri City and Fort Bend. It hits on, gets to Brazoria County too. So it's a very different district, and has absorbed a lot of what was the 9th district that was being served by Al Green. Now his district is very Republican, and has a large chunk of it has been moved to East Harris County, which is now a Republican. It's now considered a Republican seat. So they have twisted and turned and ripped apart, shredded. It's a bad map. So people need to speak out, and they have not been given their fair or due process in this process by having that map come out so late, not giving people real opportunity to be a part of that process. It's wrong. And so we have got to now try to stop it still. There are still some ways to do that. We've had, in my office, my congressional office, we've had phone bankings. We have phone banking where people call the governor, call the state senator, call their state rep. So that's one of the options. The other thing that we've had too is that people have had the opportunity to get involved by speaking out with these protests and so forth. We've had a press conference. We've had a couple of press conferences, one of which Michael Eric Dyson flew down to also state his concern in voice against redistricting, so we've done that, trying to raise the profile of the issue. And then finally, there's gonna be a chance to try to stop it at the legislative floor. So calling your state reps now, calling your state senator now, calling the governor now, and that is likely to be taken up for consideration on Tuesday of this week. So we are in a sweet spot. So we're in a sweet spot in terms of this conversation, because people can still make those calls and say no to redistricting. And quite frankly, the quorum should be broken. I mean, we should not be moving forward with a vote right now. And so they have not given the right process, and the maps themselves are wrong. Though, they came down with the intention to dilute Black and brown voices, and also to pick up additional Republican seats. And so there is a really bad motivation behind all of this. And, truth be told, we just need to fight back. I mean, we are in a position where we can do that right now. And I encourage people to do that, emails and phone calls.
Okay, so yes, that's what I was going to ask you. How can people reverse this before it's too late? Emails and phone calls.
Yes, to your state reps, to your state senators, to the governor, tell them no.
And how can people find the phone number so their state reps?
You can just go online and it'll show them.
Okay.
And
tell them the name of the
offices.
website so we know.
Yeah, so if you go to the state capitol website, you can go online and you can find all the state reps and the senators. You can be limited to your own, or you can choose to contact others. I mean, generally people take the calls from, they don't say you can't call them if you're not in their district, but it's best if you are a constituent and you can say that when you call. Yeah.
All right. Wow, Miss Amanda, you are on it this morning, and just letting people know what's at stake, because a lot of people, they may not be paying attention, or they may not be aware of what's going to happen. Because my next question is so if this does pass and the map is redrawn, how are we going to feel the effects of it? Us that live in the 18th district, how are we going to be directly affected by this? What's going to change in our lives?
You probably will not know who you're voting for. We got the special election coming up in November, and then there's probably going to be a runoff that's happening close in time with the midterm election. So people are going to be so confused. What am I voting for? Who am I voting for? And then who represents you? We take pride in our representatives, and you might be thrust into someone else's district you don't identify with, who doesn't represent your views. And so it's problematic in terms of your voice actually being reflected in the outcomes for your community. And you want to always have somebody that represents your views and your perspective. And we've been pretty cohesive in the 18th Congressional District in terms of that. So now having it sliced and diced and chopped and cooked, and all of the things that's happening right now, and shipped off all over the place. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, and it's heartbreaking. I'll tell you that too. I have talked to so many people in these last just few days since the maps have come out. And I have talked to people who are in tears. I have talked to people who their eyes are watering up when they start talking about it, because it's also part of their identity in a way. And so now it's you didn't discard it, and this is your district, and this is the person that represents you, and you don't feel that way. You don't feel connected in the same way. That pride, yeah. And so I've heard people say, I'm not gonna vote. And I said, no, you can't say that.
That's not good.
But that's how they feel, and we have to, but it can get participation to wane, and that's the last thing we need is fewer people voting. We need as many people voting as possible. And right now with this redistricting, it's wrong. So, what are the next steps? People ask me that all the time. It's got to go to the House. It's got to pass the state legislature. They're going to get this done before the end of the month. This is happening in August. So it's it's on a speed track, okay? So they're going to get this done. They're pushing it through. They're trying to get this done in August. What's next? Well, there should be litigation, right? So we got to sue. There just has to be lawsuits, and so that often happens when redistricting occurs. And so hopefully, there is some ability to make some modifications there. The new maps will not apply to the special election taking place on November 4th, 2025. the new maps will only apply to the midterm take place in March.
2026.
Yeah, March 3rd, 2026. That's
Okay,
right.
that's the
So
midterm
people need to,
election.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So it's for the midterms, but people are also very confused about that. So do not think that you cannot, if you were in the original seat where you used to vote for Congresswoman Jackson Lee and you used to vote for Congressman Turner, then in the special election, you are still in that seat. I mean, that district. And so just be aware that it does not affect the special election because we're just serving out the rest of Congressman Turner's term.
Okay, all right. Wow, that is a lot.
That's a
lot.
It's a lot.
Yes, well, it's important. So my next question for you, what makes you, like, out of all the 30 candidates that are running, what makes you like the most qualified to be the next 18th Congresswoman?
I have been consistently in this district, serving this district for as long as I can remember. And I think in this race, I am the candidate with the experience necessary, the bold vision, and the ability to execute the change that the community is looking for and deserve. When I, was growing up, I can't tell you a time where I wasn't involved. My family in the Fifth Ward area my great uncles used to own a C&L shoe repair, and so they would mentor young boys and young men and become shoe shine boys and things like that. My mom used to work at the charity hospital St. Elizabeth until it closed, and so we have deep roots in that district. I went to Eisenhower. We, just have served that district. I take it very personally that we get it right, because I've seen, it's a part of me, and so we want to make sure that we get it right. But then at the same time, when I was on city council, I can tell you how many examples. I'll never forget when Harvey struck, because we're on the 8-year anniversary of Harvey, believe it or not. And when that happened 8 years ago, we had 51 inches of rainfall. It was the second worst disaster in U.S. history at the time. And I got a call to go check on some of our seniors, and I learned that they were cleaning up the house, but they wouldn't remove the walls that had been soiled by floodwater. So you're supposed to take that out, the sheetrock out, otherwise you're gonna get mold. So they weren't doing that. And so I asked them, well, why not? They said, oh, they're dry.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. Who's gonna do it?
Right, that is expensive.
Right. It's expensive, and who's gonna do it, and all of the things. So they just were like, and so that being said, we didn't want all of our seniors having all these health problems. Right. So we started doing this mobilization, going door to door, hundreds of homes and hundreds of volunteers. And when I would knock on those doors, you know what they would ask? They'd say, what are you doing here? And then I'd say, well, I'm your city council member, I'm here to help. And then they'd say, well, are you up for re-election already? And they ask that because we've conditioned our communities to think that the only time we ever going to show up on their doorstep,
when they're trying to get votes.
Then we're trying to get something from.
But you did this outside of elections.
Yeah,
season.
it was outside, and so nobody understood. I was just there to do my job.
Yeah.
And we've got a reverse course. So I brought that story in just to say I've seen the disconnects of public policy. I've seen the disconnects for how democracy isn't working well for people, and so I'm able to bring that into my service as the next congresswoman and really be effective. I will also say this, my background in public finance will also assist, because part of what you do in Congress is bring home, as they call it, the bacon to your district. You bring home resources, and so you have to be able to do that as well.
Okay, all right, well, that's very good, very commendable, helping people not have mold in their house after the hurricane. That's good. So my next question is, how will you work to ensure that the voices of all the constituents in the 18th district are heard and represented by Congress?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that you got to meet people where they are. And when I say meet people where they are, I mean literally meet them where they are. So you don't expect them to come to Washington to protest if they got a problem. You should be going to their neighborhood meetings. You should be going into the community and being a part of that fabric so that you're learning on the ground what is going on. So that means having a consistent, active presence in the community. So I will be coming back to the district constantly. My team will be in the district constantly, because that's how you form relationships, that's how you get information, and that's how you serve your community best. The other thing is with various constituencies, bringing them in as advisory councils, having exchanges with people, finding ways that you can be on the forefront of an issue versus on the back end where somebody wasn't consulted. I firmly believe, like as a policymaker, it's important for you to get the buy-in at the forefront. And that way, when you get something up and it's proposed, you're in a situation where everybody's lined up. You don't have the opposition, you don't have the challenges faced because you got it up front. And part of that is also staying engaged and activated, keeping the people close, the constituencies close, the people that you talk to on the campaign trail who ask you questions about their issues. Bring them back in and say, well, here's how we're addressing that. Hold me accountable. That's the other thing that I think is very rare. I tell people, I want to be held accountable. I don't want to be part of the problem. When we saw what happened in November, when Kamala Harris lost that presidential election, we didn't lose it because we don't have enough people that could have voted for her. We lost it because we have a swath of our demographic that is staying at home because they don't feel heard, because they are frustrated with how they're being communicated with. I mean, there's a litany of things causing them to stay at home. And then, of course, there's racism and sexism as well. But in addition, there are other challenges.
A lot of people just don't believe in politics.
Yeah, they don't believe that. They don't understand the connection in their lives. And that's where I come into play. I'm here to say, listen, you may not be seeing the nexus between what is being said or what is being done in your life, in your community, and you say, why should I vote and nothing ever changes here? Well, then if I go into Congress, that's when it will start to change. And I want to be the change that people will need to see in order to re-engage in this process that they've stepped away from.
Yeah, so what would you say are your top priorities? I know you work with the small businesses.
Yeah.
I know you work for the transit. So, but tell us, what are your top priorities?
Yeah. So some of my priorities include what I call meat and potatoes issues. Healthcare. You got to have access to healthcare. That's critical. With this big beautiful bill, it's even more so challenging some of that. So fighting for healthcare and improvement on access to healthcare. The second is education. Normally you wouldn't hear a congressional candidate talk about education, but because we're in the midst of the Department of Education being dismantled by the president, and meanwhile our state saying that you are now basically reducing funding that made available to our public schools by way of these vouchers that are being distributed, you are going to get a double whammy on these children, and nobody's thinking about their future. Nobody's thinking about what happens to them, and we've got to put that back in the forefront. So I am going to be proactive on the federal side and taking as many measures as possible to help assist with funding education. The second piece is, or the third piece is economic opportunity. I believe we got to have a community where every single person in it, no matter what their background, no matter where they live, has the opportunity to thrive in the community. And so that means small business support. When I was on, that's an example. When I was on city council, I learned that, we were talking about, one day we were talking about how we were the most diverse city in the nation. And I just like, well, what good is it to be the most diverse city in the nation if we're not solving the challenges that our diverse communities face?
Amen.
And that's the issue of equity. And so we got to work on some task force efforts to reduce some of that disparity by way of introducing ways that people could have more access to capital, because minority and women-owned businesses often face higher barriers and challenges to accessing bank loans than others do. And then also we worked on the issue of bringing in more tech and innovation for the city, and so I led that effort too. So I'm somebody who likes to create opportunity, economic opportunity, and jobs. We need to be creating job opportunities and then dealing with inflation as best we can, because it's hitting our families hard. So those are some of my focal points. From an infrastructure standpoint, I'm going to say that it's not the sexiest topic, but it's important because it keeps people safe from flooding, and of course it helps us transportation-wise get to and from where we need to go. So I'm very passionate about issues around infrastructure. I always tell people you can't stop it from raining, but you can be prepared to catch it when it does. And right now, we see our residents suffer from a lack of our preparation as government in keeping them safe with the infrastructure investment.
Especially during hurricane season.
Correct, and we can't just talk about infrastructure when there's, your residents are floating on a boat and then you start talking about infrastructure. You should have been talking about infrastructure well before that, so that we actually prevent them from having to float around on boats.
Right.
That's the way we gotta start retooling our thinking. Disaster recovery, we gotta retool that. It doesn't work well for anyone, and we've gotta retool all of these things. And so I'm going in to do some heavy lifting, but I think that there will be progress made, and there's an opportunity to do so if I am sent to Congress.
All right, so infrastructure, healthcare, economic growth, and education.
You got it.
Okay.
You on the campaign trail.
Yes, well, I love it. So before we wrap up, can you tell the people how can we keep up with you on social media and any final remarks?
Absolutely. Please keep up with us. My website is www.edwardsforhouston.com. Obviously, you can sign up to volunteer. You can also sign up to contribute online. Anybody can do that from anywhere. And then also, you can follow us on social media. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter as AK Edwards TX. And then I'm on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, Amanda K. Edwards TX.
All right, so make sure you keep up with Miss Amanda, and Election Day, November 5th?
November 4th.
November 4th.
2025.
November 4th, 2025. So yes, make sure you keep up with that information and just keep yourself informed. So one last thing, Miss Amanda, go ahead and pick a song, because this interview was great and I feel even more knowledgeable about, you and the district. So
Okay,
what you want to hear?
Oh, I don't know. It's so
Any
which genre?
song.
Tell me, like from
Or hip hop and R&B. Don't even look right here. Just pick a
Don't
song.
look. Oh my gosh. Let's see. So it needs to be.
You making it too hard. Just
I
pick a
am.
song.
I want to get something good. Okay, so we'll do Little Things by India Reed.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fine. All right. Yes, and thank you so much for coming on the Leela Show and just gracing us with your presence.
Okay.
This stuff is important.